Welcome to the OwlSeek and the Nest community. I'm so glad you're here because you've chosen to dive into your own nest, your heart-centered place, and start to do the work of diving into what you've not been willing to hear and not been willing to see. The first thing that we have to look at when you're starting this work is what is the lie you've been telling yourself. So none of us want to admit or believe that we've been telling ourselves or living in a way that's not true. But here's how it shows up. It shows up in a way of constantly being able to say, I don't know what to do. Or no, you're coming from a place of fear, so everything is just shut down and you're withdrawn. It comes up where you cannot control yourself emotionally and you don't know why you can't stop crying or you're enraged all the time. I've seen this show up in the way of chronic pain and chronic fatigue where you've been to 6 doctors and they're telling you there's nothing wrong with you. And you have to then go within and go, well, what is this thought pattern? These thoughts that have become beliefs that I agreed to subscribe to. What is it about that needs some reflection to ask yourself, is this even true anymore? Some of the things and ways we've been living show up to be masks. They're not even true parts of our authentic self. Our authentic self is when we can peel off the mask, go into the heart-centered place, and be able to reveal to ourselves that we are living some kind of lie, something's not working for us, and it's time for us to get to the other side of that. How do we do that? We have to be willing. How do we become willing? We make a decision. All you have to do is decide you're done with this life that you've been living. All you have to do is get honest that you've been wearing a mask and living a lie about what's been showing up in your life and how you're participating in it. This program is not about skirting responsibility or assigning blame to anyone else. It's not. That's never going to work for you. This is about owning it, going to that place within, being willing to have a look at what is this lie I've been telling myself. And what am I now going to have to do to dive into the place, push through fear, push through pride and ego, have the courage to change my mind, be willing to go within, forgive myself for past things that have happened, forgive others, have some grace on the situation, which means I'm just going to feel differently about it, and then be able to come from an empowered place of love from within and share with other people the truth of what's going on. So is the lie something that is salacious or secretive? No, not always. And for some it is. Sometimes the lie is that I'm in a loving marriage. Sometimes the lie is that I'm participating in a loving marriage. I work with people who are unfaithful. I work with people who are dishonest. I work with people who are coming out of past addictions, and some of those characteristics and behaviors carry over. We have to be willing to see things differently. So, what happens when we've pushed through the so what of where we've gotten to? Well, the so what tells us we don't want to be there anymore. Now what? Now we're willing, we have a look at ourselves of who we are and what we do. Who we are our core values. That's the Knowings program. What we do is the OwlSeek Method, and that's the OwlSeek program. Our values, our core values about who we are, come from a place of us making a decision to ask ourselves, am I living in truth? Am I living authentically? Is this story that I'm telling myself and others true? And am I aligned with the choices I'm making? Do they feel right? When we can answer yes to that, because we've dove in and we've gone through the values list and we've decided which values are going to work for us, we then go, okay, with what I do, how is this going to show up? And I call this our management values. This is how we manage our life, the stuff, the things. Who we are is the place we're coming from, our core values. What we do are our management values. So we have a separate list for what we do. That's like the hat we put on when we go to work. That's the hat we put on when we're on the sales call. I used to be told that I had 2 different voices. I had the voice that would answer the phone, which was like customer service voice. And then I would have this like miserable, enraged voice that I'd speak to the people in my house with. And when I was called out about that, I really was able to dive into the lie I was living, that I was happy, that I was doing meaningful, productive work every day, that I was enjoying motherhood with toddlers, and I wasn't. I was in postpartum and it was hard. So the truth was I needed more help. The truth was the mask was like the answering the phone, the customer service, the answering the door, like make it all look okay, but it wasn't. I was dying inside. So our words have power. The words we tell ourselves have power. We have to dive into that place and allow ourselves the power to understand, was this something that was told to me? Is this religious formation? Am I believing things that have come to me because this was told to me by a religious group and a doctrine of telling, and I'm so scared to change my mind because I was told if I changed my mind, something bad was going to happen. This dark cloud, this sin nature, this consequence. There's all kinds of theories. I have seen and heard many things, and just when I think I've seen and heard it all, something else comes through my practice. So I want you to be vulnerable and open and honest and dive into this place where you're like, what is the story I'm telling myself? Am I willing to change it? Can I be willing to understand truths change? The truth of the world might actually mean something different now. It certainly has meant something different to me as a woman in my 20s and then 30s and now 40s. And I hope as a wise, beautiful woman in my 50s and 60s, I will also have those experiences to experience change with the understanding and the willingness that things change. I always invite to myself a new perspective. So when I'm willing to change the words that come into my life, I'm willing to change my perspective on what has to be true or has to be right or me having to be right. Those are forceful things that don't work and they're not necessary. Nobody wants to hang out with somebody who has to be right all the time. When somebody has to be right, somebody has to be wrong. There's a war, a conflict, and there has to be a winner. And the person coming from the place of force and control and having to be right, they're probably the one who's going to have to win with the other side. So we need to have a perspective. Come out of where we've been in this nest in ourself or nest outside of ourself and be able to go into a heart-centered place and check in, am I willing to look at a new perspective? After that, we need to put a new layer of boundaries on our life. Boundaries are what we keep sacred at our heart center, our core values. And then there's another ring around it. So in the description I give you, there's 3 hearts over top of a tree of life, and there's space between them. At the heart center, where the nest would be on the tree of life, is the most important place for the values to live within you, in your heart. Those are why and how and where you operate from. That's your belief system. That's your connection to faith. That's your connection to higher power. That's where it all is. We have to make intentional time to go there, to check in with the words and perspective we're using and be able to output from there new boundaries and ways of living for the activities that we do, the actions we take, the businesses that we do, the volunteer movements we're part of, whatever it is. And we take action from that place. When we are able to be honest and willing and check in with our values and align and be authentic and operate from that place, we are able to show up differently. And the whole point about this is getting new wisdom and knowledge from within, from your faith systems, from your belief systems, from your family lineage, from ancestor stories you're pulling back, wherever it is. And allow for these to change. There's ebbs and flows of life of how this information comes in. Maybe if a great-grandparent passes, you're going to be more interested in a history path to how you get to where you're going. And maybe if you've just had people disappoint you and hurt you, you're going to come from a place of not wanting any of that outside stuff and going from within. All of this, I suggest you work with a trusted professional with, work with a trusted psychologist, a trusted counselor, a trusted doctor. I am not all of those things in this program for you. These are supplementary resources to help you get more information for conquering those wars within yourself and turning them into things you don't have to fight anymore. How? Through this method. I look forward to walking this path with you.